It is game day for the Baltimore Ravens here on Christmas as the Ravens will take on the San Francisco 49ers. But the Ravens' disrespect somehow continues. We talk about what the national media narratives have been and why the Ravens are disrespected. All that and more coming up next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Ostreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here and making Locked On Ravens your first listen each and every single day, wherever you're available on all podcasting platforms. That includes over in video form on YouTube and audio form, wherever you get your shows. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are a 5-day-a-week Ravens podcast here, and we have no breaks on Locked On Ravens. It is Christmas here today, so a very Merry Christmas to everyone, to you and yours. I hope you're able to spend it with some family, opening gifts, having good food, and watching some good football. Hopefully, the Ravens win here today. But 5 days a week means 5 days a week. So even on days like Christmas and Thanksgiving, on those holidays, we still give you daily Ravens content as we are here today. So be sure to subscribe, follow along, audio form, video form. It is the same show, both in audio and in video. Plus, we do more Ravens content after every single Ravens game. So we will be live later tonight after the Ravens play the 49ers. We'll be doing a live stream reaction to that. So be sure to stay tuned. And also after every single piece of big Ravens news, tell a friend, tell a family member, we are here for them as well. And there's a lot to get to today. Obviously, it is a Christmas night game, so the Ravens will be facing off with the San Francisco 49ers, a battle of two 11-3 teams. We'll be previewing that game, right? It's a really important game, so we will be previewing that in the second and third parts of the show. More of a full preview in the second part, and then we'll go through scenarios. I want to make this a show where even if you're listening to it after the game happens, you can listen to my takes, predictions I have for the game, and plus there'll be a final segment about what happens if the Ravens win, what happens if they lose. We'll walk through those scenarios. But I do want to talk about and kind of address the disrespect that has happened with the Ravens. Really, it's somewhat been for the year, but it really has shown itself over the past week as we have led up to this game. And it's just, a lot of people are wondering why. Why are the Ravens continuing to get disrespected like this? We will talk about it in the first part of the show. Coming up now, let's get into it right now. It is unreal, to be honest, the level of disrespect that has been thrown the Ravens' way. And look, if the Ravens have been asked about it, Kyle Hamilton's talked about it, multiple players have. At the end of the day, Kyle Hamilton said it best. They let their pads do the talking. And it's true. They're 11-3, top of the AFC. This has been a team that has never cared about the outside noise. They're going to do what they do, prepare how they prepare, and execute how they execute. They're not going to let anybody from outside of the organization influence what they do. But I'm sure some players here and there have heard the disrespect. I mean, I think the clip that has gotten the most attention is Mike Florio, who essentially said that the Ravens have no chance against the 49ers here tonight and that they'll get blown out. And if it's a Super Bowl preview, it's going to be really boring. And part of it, he said, the Ravens are traveling to San Francisco and this, that, and the other. You have Richard Sherman, who talks about how, Lamar's not an MVP candidate because of what happened in 2019 and those stats compared to this season and the total touchdowns and everything. You've seen here and there. I mean, even I think the clip that got me was Shannon Sharp. I mean, a former Raven who was talking about the Jacksonville Week 15 game and said, Kyle Hamilton, he didn't play in that game. And, everyone's like, well, wait a minute, Kyle Hamilton played and he was the best player on that defense. So it's like, do they even watch the games? I think is part. And that's why, to be honest, I'm really proud of what we do here on the Locked On Podcast Network and, the other local outlets, media coverage that, Ravens focus, because look, we do watch the games here. I watch every game. I watch every game in depth. I watch the highlights. I watch the tape. There's a lot of time and effort that I put into this and put into this team. There's a lot of time and effort that other content creators, other Ravens content creators put into the team. And the fact that we do it here on Locked On, every team has it. It's different than the national media where it's, were they able to catch every single game? Were they able to watch every game in depth and in detail before they go on the air? There are legitimate questions about that, but it seems like the Ravens haven't really been given a fair shake compared to other teams. And it's weird to say this because Lamar Jackson is probably the flashiest player in the league, but I think they get it done without being flashy for the most part. Again, Lamar does his thing. Lamar's super flashy, and they have those big, Lamar Jackson highlights, and he's ridiculous and all that. He's Houdini. But they're a run the football team. Keaton Mitchell and Zay Flowers have provided that. But again, it's not like flashy, like, Deebo Samuel going here. And again, I'm not taking away from what other teams have done, but this is a team that has the best pass defense in the NFL right now. They're a team that their defense, to me, is the best team in the NFL, and they're not getting the respect that they deserve. In all honesty here, I feel like for me, a lot of it has to do with the fact that Lamar Jackson is Lamar Jackson. And some people to this day still do not like how Lamar Jackson plays the game, which was a terrible argument to begin, starting back in his high school days, honestly. But he's different. And the fact that he can go 14 of 21 for 171 yards passing and the Ravens can win by 3 scores, to me, it shouldn't matter if you win by 3 scores, if you win by 1, or if you pass for 400 yards, if you pass for 100. If you win the game, you win the game. If you're 11-3, you're 11-3. And that's what the Ravens are. The Ravens are a perfect team? No, they're not a perfect team. But to give the Ravens no chance, just in this specific instance, to give them no chance against San Francisco. Maybe the Ravens lose this game. Maybe it's ugly for the Ravens. Maybe it happens, right? The NFL's in every given Sunday league, or I guess in this case, every given Monday, considering we're here on Monday. But to outright just say, San Francisco is going to throttle them because Baltimore's traveling and because San Francisco is so good. Well, one of my arguments this season has been, the Ravens, they have a tough final stretch, but they're a good football team. Right? It's not like, they're a mediocre, or they're not a good team and they have this gauntlet coming up. No, they're a good football team. They're going to be in dogfights with teams. They're going to challenge teams. And honestly, in the AFC, the Ravens right now, to me, and for a while, honestly, have looked like the team to beat. But the Ravens still aren't getting that respect. And again, they don't care. And as long as the Ravens are winning, I'm sure, fans can say, well, you know what? You're saying all this craziness, but look at the record. If they win the Super Bowl, what are the excuses going to be then, right? It's just all this craziness going on. But I think the level of disrespect continues to grow here for the Ravens. And again, it's not taking away anything from San Francisco, but you hear what these people are talking about, and you would think that the Ravens are going to lose by 3 scores tonight, and it's a lock. It's a guarantee. Maybe it happens. I wouldn't expect it to. I expect it to be pretty close. To me, though, you have to give respect where it's due. You don't have to like the team. You don't have to like how they do things. If that's what you like or don't like, fine. It's on you what you like and don't like. But you have to give respect where it's due. I didn't like Tom Brady and those Patriots, but I respected what they did outside of obviously the scandals that happened. But, you got to respect Tom Brady as someone who led that Patriots team to championship after championship after championship. You don't have to like him, but you have to respect that he's one of the greatest, if not the greatest quarterbacks of all time. You don't have to like what Lamar Jackson does. I don't know why you wouldn't, but you have to respect what he's doing, and it's in a different way. I get he doesn't have the passing yards, the passing touchdowns, and all that, but he doesn't have to. And if you look deeper into, to me, it's just context stuff. If you put together all the context of an argument, whether it's Lamar's MVP or why the Ravens are impressive versus aren't impressive to you or whatever, what's the context of it? If you put together that context, you put together a good argument, it's a lot easier, I'd say, to have a conversation about that. And if you agree to disagree, that's fine. But to say, Lamar Jackson only has X amount of passing touchdowns, X amount of total touchdowns, when Gus Edwards is sitting there with 11 on the season after the Ravens have, again, from the 2-yard line, what do teams do sometimes? They'll throw a fade to the end zone, or, they'll play action it and the quarterback will throw a touchdown. No, they run Gus Edwards up there because they have a bulldozing back, and they don't care whether Lamar or Gus Edwards score. Personally, I don't care if Lamar or Gus Edwards scores it. Just score. Just score the ball. It doesn't matter. But then you hear those narratives used against the players or against the teams in the arguments. And to me, it's just a lot of different context that isn't being put out there by maybe people who don't have the time to go and fully dive into 32 teams worth of tape. So again, it's a level of disrespect that I think has maybe gotten a little out of hand here, just because we haven't even played the game yet at the time of this recording. And again, maybe you're listening to this after the fact and the Ravens have gotten stomped, and maybe it happens, but maybe the Ravens stomped, right? It can go both ways. to take a team. This team isn't playing like, this isn't the Panthers right now, right? It's not the Commanders, not the Jets. The Ravens are a Super Bowl contender, and they're not really getting the respect they deserve. Again, not a perfect team. Definitely do have flaws, but again, every team does, and the Ravens have played really well, and I think they deserve to be treated that way. But again, they care about themselves, right? They don't care about the outside noise. They're not going to let it impact them. If they win the Super Bowl, a lot of receipts can be pulled for sure. Coming up, though, in the second part of the show, we'll dive a bit more into that Ravens and San Francisco game tonight. Get into some predictions for me, such as biggest impactful player, underrated player to watch, who has to have a big game, and a lot more. Stay tuned for that. Plenty to talk about on the show. First, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot over on FanDuel right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app also is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and a lot more. And for this Ravens and 49ers game, again, maybe you're listening after the fact, so these predictions might not have worked out well, but hey, Lamar may be over in touchdown passes over on FanDuel. Maybe Odell Beckham Jr., anytime touchdown scorer, or maybe the Ravens will get a defensive touchdown. That could be something to watch as well. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We're back. It's our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you on this Monday, Christmas Day. Again, hopefully your Christmas is filled. It's very merry and bright, and you're able to enjoy it with friends and family. Again, really appreciative for the community that we've built over here on Locked On Ravens, multiple communities, honestly, whether it's audio form. You've been here with me since the beginning of that. We started up video form a couple years after that. If you're here with me on YouTube, I really appreciate you as well. And on social media, we're starting to build social media a little bit more on other platforms. Obviously, Twitter or X has been the main one, but going to definitely try to dive more into Facebook and Instagram as the year continues and as the offseason goes. I'll really dive headfirst in that as well. But the Ravens have a big game to play today against the 49ers. Again, if you're listening after the fact, again, I don't know what happened, so you can clown me in the comments if I say anything that's crazy, but it's a big game. 11-3 for both teams, playing for top seeds in their respective conferences, the Ravens in the AFC, the 49ers in the NFC. Now, just to provide some statistical context here for what the Ravens and 49ers are going up against, the 49ers come into this game as the best passing offense in the NFL in terms of net yards per attempt. They're averaging 8.8 net yards per attempt. Brock Purdy having one heck of a year. Again, I think this game is going to determine a lot when it comes to the MVP conversation for Lamar Jackson versus Brock Purdy. Rushing the ball, San Francisco is fifth. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is essentially that rushing offense. So San Francisco comes in number 1 and number 5, respectively. Number 1 in passing and at number 5 in rushing. On the other side, for the Ravens offense, this is the 6th best passing offense in the league in terms of net yards per attempt, 6.6, and the number 2 rushing offense in the league with 5 yards per attempt. Go to the defensive side of the ball for the Ravens. We'll start there. Number 1 in passing with 4.5 net yards per attempt allowed. Now, 21st against the run in terms of net yards per attempt. I do think that number is a little bit skewed based off of they've had a couple of really bad games and a couple of really good ones, but still 21st, giving up 4.3 yards per carry. But San Francisco is not much better at 19, giving up 4.3 as well on the ground. Now, that has to do with, again, just little percentages, but the 49ers are 19th there. Then the 49ers come in as the 6th best passing defense. So really similar teams. Now, biggest matchup to watch for me. We talked about this with Brian Peacock on our crossover episode. So if you want an even more in-depth analysis on the San Francisco side of things and to get how San Francisco is feeling, be sure to check out our episode from Crossover Thursday, which we do every single week on Locked On here with the Ravens opponents during the season. But at this point, I think Deebo Samuel versus Kyle Hamilton is the one. And the Ravens have to win that matchup. Deebo Samuel is a weapon offensively, can do so many things for that San Francisco offense. But Kyle Hamilton is the weapon for the Ravens defense. And he can do so many things defensively, moving around. He talked about his role a lot this week, saying it can be a lot for him, but he embraces it. He likes being able to have that impact for him. So whoever wins that matchup is going to have a huge impact on the game. Hopefully it's Kyle Hamilton. And I think that, honestly, what might happen is Kyle Hamilton is going to make a couple big plays and Deebo Samuel is going to make a couple big plays. I think it's inevitable. Both of those guys will have at least one, oh, look at that. Look what happened here. But it's two high-powered offenses against two very, very good defenses. both of which are suffering from some injuries. I know on the defensive side of the ball for the 49ers, you're looking at Eric Armstead, who was out for this game, a big loss for San Francisco in the run game. So Baltimore, even though Keaton Mitchell is down now, hopefully Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, and Melvin Gordon can get things going alongside maybe some more runs as well. For the Ravens defensively, not so many injuries. Arthur Millette, though, was a big one. He's played really well coming in as a slot corner. I personally did not have very high expectations for Arthur Millette, but hey, he proved me wrong, and I'm very happy he did. Jalen Armour-Davis also ruled out, but again, Kyle Hamilton should be good to go with that knee, the sprained MCL. So Baltimore and San Francisco are going to have some opportunities to score, to put up points, but it's about, can San Francisco contain Lamar Jackson, get him down on first contact, not let him scramble around, and also can the Ravens offensive line hold up? Can Ronnie Stanley hold up against a pass rush that has Nick Bosa, the newly acquired Chase Young? If Javon Hargrave plays, he's questionable right now, so we don't know at the time of this recording. He's a big guy in there as well. Ravens offensive line versus San Francisco defensive line is going to be really big too. But then on the other side is stopping Christian McCaffrey and stopping some of those screens, those play actions that the 49ers are so good at running. It's Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. They're going to miss Jawan Jennings in this one. He's a big play, third down guy, can go box you out, big jump ball player. But it's also a battle of the linebackers, right? You have Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw over there on the San Francisco side going up against Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen on the Ravens side of things. And it's going to be really big for me because I think an underrated player who I'm looking at on the Ravens to hopefully step up in a big way would have been Isaiah Likely a couple weeks ago. I think that's kind of out of the question. Offensively, this is going to be a weird pick because I could say Melvin Gordon, which I do think is an option, but I'm going to go with Nelson Aguilar if the other receivers aren't stepping up and playing a good game. Aguilar's been really steady this year for the Ravens and has really stepped up in big moments for them. You know, hasn't been a 100-catch, 1,000-yard guy. No one expected him to be, but he's been a lot more sound as that fourth option than I think a lot of people expected. So I think if Aguilar can make a couple of timely catches here, Lamar Jackson and Nelson Aguilar seem to have the connection. That one's going to be really key for me. On the defensive side of the ball, there are a couple of players to watch. I feel like, to me, Travis Jones, I mean, again, Justin Madubuike is playing out of his mind right now, Michael Pierce and all those guys. But Travis Jones has been a guy who's had a couple of big plays here in the past few weeks. Can he get Brock Purdy down? He's a heck of a pass rusher. And I think he could maybe contribute here a little bit. Most definitely, maybe Tavius Robinson has a big play. Tavius Robinson could be a big player. Again, these are very underrated guys who maybe could swing the game in one direction or the other. A guy who has to have a big game, though, I think it's Ronnie Stanley. They're going to do their rotation. It feels like Stanley's not healthy right now. And, you know, he had the extra day to rest for the San Francisco game, but I assume we're going to see a lot of Patrick McCary, a bunch of Daniel Falele from Morgan Moses too. You just cannot have the tackle box collapse on Lamar Jackson like it has over the past couple of weeks here, because it's scary. It's risky for Lamar's health. We've seen quarterback after quarterback after quarterback go down, and you're knocking on wood here that Lamar can finish the season healthy. But if you can't block for him, it increases that risk. And that's not me talking about Lamar's play style. That's me talking about NFL football, where, look, if that happens, anything can happen, whether it's Lamar Jackson, who is more of a mobile quarterback, or someone who just stands in the pocket and can't move like Lamar can. This is going to be a huge game. Now, in terms of an actual loss, as I've talked about before on this show, an NFC loss is not the worst thing in the world. If you lose to San Francisco tonight, does not end your season, does not end your chances for the number one seed, but it is a chance to make a huge statement on national TV on Christmas night. And hey, make a lot of Ravens fans the end of their Christmas would make it really good, right? So I think this is going to be such a good game here, but there's multiple implications if they do win or if they do lose. So coming up in the final part of the show, we will talk about what comes next for the Ravens if they win versus if they lose. Stay tuned for that. A lot to talk about on the show. First, this episode is brought to you by Gametime, and there have been plenty of times where I've had frustrating ticket buying experiences in my life. Sometimes I wasn't sure if the seats were good. Other times I couldn't find last-minute deals, and sometimes there are just no good deals at all. But you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, because Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you with Kindle last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from receipt, and the best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And on the Game Time app, there are plenty of things to browse. Obviously, in the Baltimore area, the Ravens will be in San Francisco for tonight's game, but they round it out with 2 home games, Miami in Week 17 and Pittsburgh in Week 18, so be sure to check out Game Time for those. Plus, the Game Time app has great things on it, such as views from all the seats in the venue, plus the lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, job loss protection, and more. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. You can buy tickets in seconds with 2 taps, plus they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on your tickets with zone deals. You pick the section in Game Time, pick the seats for an average of 18% savings. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Down the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, spelled LOCKEDONNFL, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Ask me to take its lowest price guarantee. We're back here rounding out Locked On Ravens on Monday, Christmas. Kevin Oestreicher still talking with you here. Again, no breaks on Locked On Ravens, even on big holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, the whole 9 yards. We bring you consistent 5-day-a-week Ravens content. I've been at this since 2019. It's a crazy amount of episodes for me here. We're now diving into episode 1146. This is what today's episode will be consecutively. Have not missed an episode 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens. So be sure to subscribe, follow along for that consistent Ravens content, video form, audio form. And again, really appreciate everybody who listens to me, who tunes in and listens to me talk football and also engages in conversation with me, whether it's in the comments, on social media, the whole 9 yards. So tell a friend, tell a family member. Again, thank you for everything. But let's talk about what comes next for the Ravens. Obviously, it's a big game tonight. Hasn't happened at the time of this recording, but even if they win, even if they lose, big implications either way. So if they win, the path to the 1 seed gets a lot simpler. They would go and obviously have that 1 seed still against Miami, who did beat Dallas on Sunday. So it'd be 12-3 versus 11-4, but would still set up pretty much a battle for the 1 seed there with the Ravens and the Dolphins in Week 17. But then there's the big thing about if they lose, where the Ravens would then drop down to 11-4. Now, both Miami and Baltimore's conference record right now is 7-3. So you got to go tiebreaker after tiebreaker after tiebreaker. But they'd be in a 2-way tie for the first spot. And then it would really come down to that Miami game, because if Baltimore loses and it's 11-4 versus 11-4, Baltimore, Miami in Week 17, if the Dolphins would win that game, they would move ahead of Baltimore. They would go to 12-4. The Ravens would drop down to 11-5. And then even if Miami lost to Buffalo and Baltimore beat the Steelers to get them back to the same record, Miami would have the head-to-head tiebreaker over the Ravens, and that would still have Miami be the 1 seed. Now, if they won and the Ravens are 12-3, 11-4, and the Ravens lose that game to the Dolphins, there is still an opportunity, even though the Dolphins will jump ahead of the Ravens there's still an opportunity for the Ravens to get the 1 seed. That would be if the Ravens would beat Pittsburgh in Week 18 and the Dolphins would lose to Buffalo in Week 18. So there are opportunities, even if the Ravens – look, if the Ravens lose to San Francisco and lose to Miami, it's pretty much as big of a disaster you can have here if you're looking for the 1 seed for the Ravens. Plus, you now got to keep in mind that Cleveland has the third best record, which is unbelievable to talk about. Third best record in the AFC at the time of this recording at 10-5. Kansas City hasn't played yet, so they're still at 9-5. They'll play obviously today against the Raiders, but Cleveland is hot on their tail. And the Cleveland Browns and the Baltimore Ravens, they split the games against each other, but Cleveland also has a 7-3 record in the conference. So you have 11-3, 11-4, 10-5 as your top 3, all of which have 7-3 conference records. Now the difference here is Cleveland. Well, there is no difference, honestly. Cleveland and Baltimore both 3-2 in the division. Miami is 4-1 in their division, just to put that out there. Now, Miami is 7-1 at home and 4-3 on the road. Cleveland also 7-1 at home, 3-4 on the road. Baltimore's 5-2 at home and 6-1 away, which is unbelievable. They would go 7-1 on the road this season if they were to beat San Francisco, which is awesome. But I do just want to put it out there that it is not disaster if the Ravens lose this game. It'd be more of a disaster if they lost this game and the Miami game. That would be the worst case scenario, but there would still be an opportunity for them to get the 1 seed. But then if that happens, you have to start wondering about seeding. Like if they lost to both San Francisco and Miami, well, does Cleveland jump ahead of them for the division, which would be crazy to think. Cleveland, I mean, if we look at the schedules, again, I mentioned Miami's playing Baltimore and Buffalo to end the season. Pittsburgh is playing the Jets and the Bengals. There is a real possibility Cleveland ends this thing on a 5-game win streak. And if the Ravens lose and Cleveland wins, there's still a chance that Cleveland can take the North from the Ravens. So there is still pressure on the Ravens to win. I'm not saying, oh, nothing happens if the Ravens lose this game to San Francisco because it's not a conference game. With Miami winning, with Cleveland winning, it's big. It's not the end of the world, but it is big. The state of Texas, honestly, let Baltimore down here on Sunday as the Texans lose to the Browns, and Joe Flacco is throwing dimes. He's looking very January Joe-ish in December, so we'll see. And then, obviously, Dallas losing to Miami there. So Baltimore, look, and we can get back into the conversation for the 1 seed a little bit to round out this show, but I'm not afraid of the 1 seed if I'm the Ravens. I want the 1 seed. I want the week to get healthy and get right. I think you replace, you take off a week. No, you don't take the week off. You practice hard. You stay in game shape. You make sure it's not rust. There's the whole conversation about, rest versus rust and what does it mean and how will they be able to combat if they come out slow. You practice hard. You do scrimmages, right? You do some of that stuff to, again, keep everything fresh and keep everybody going. But this game is again, not the end of the world, but I still think very, very important and very, very key here. And then you start to look at maybe playoff matchups. Well, who do you want to see in the playoffs? Buffalo is on fire right now, but Jacksonville was kind of broken before this, and I wasn't really super high on them anyway. I'm a little lower on them than most, but there's a shot here that, you might have whoever it is between Miami and Buffalo going up against that AFC South winner, Houston and Indianapolis still in that conversation. I mean, Jacksonville, Indy, and Houston all tied at 8-7 right now. So there's a possibility that, the Bills advance or the Dolphins advance. If the Bills take the East from them, there is still a shot that Buffalo actually wins the AFC East and Miami drops to a wild card team. If the Dolphins lose out and the Bills win out, then Buffalo would overtake Miami and win the AFC East, which is crazy to think about. We still have a long way to go here. I know we have 3 games left for the Ravens, including tonight's one, but there are still, when it comes to playoff scenarios, this is where we will look back. This is when, especially these last couple of weeks, and especially if the Ravens lose, well, what if they had beaten the Colts? What if they hadn't dropped all those passes against Pittsburgh? What if they were able to stop Deshaun Watson with that broken shoulder? So many what ifs, but the Ravens, for the most part, have done their job for the majority of the season. Can't blame them. I mean, there are still faults in this team, as I talked about, but they're going to have to be able to execute at a very high level against San Francisco. The Ravens do match up in certain ways very well. San Francisco plays a certain style of football where, you can exploit some of these defensive backs in some ways. They've lost a couple of key guys. Will not be on the defensive side of the ball. I think it'll probably come down to around, I'm picking the Ravens personally. I'm going to say my final score prediction is going to be 29-25, an unconventional score, but I have a feeling this is going to be an unconventional game, a great way to wrap up Christmas, and hopefully we'll get a good one, and the Ravens will be able to make a lot of Ravens fans' Christmases very merry and not ruin it at the end of the day. I know the Ravens have played Christmas football before. Most recent example is not a great thing to remember, so we're not going to talk about it. But Baltimore does have an opportunity here. It's a big one and a big time to make a statement for them against one of the best teams in the NFL. That's all I have here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, later tonight, we'll be back here on Locked On Ravens on a live stream, win or lose, or tie, hopefully not a tie. Talking Ravens, talking everything that happened in that Ravens and 49ers matchup. So be sure to stay tuned. I'll see you right back here then on Locked On Ravens.